Welcome back to FBN Circuit, where I will give you part 2 of my college football predictions. Part 1 consisted of the standings, win-loss record, conference championship result, bowl qualifying teams, and the top games for each conference. This part will feature the bowl matchups, national rankings, trendy teams, the scheduling outlook, coaches on the hot seat, All-Americans, and finally the Heisman Watch. So without further ado, let's get started. So here are my bowl projections. The first screen will show you some of the smaller bowls. Something to note is that both San Jose State and Maryland are in bowls that are not directly allocated with their respective conference. However, due to a lack of projected bowl-eligible teams and conferences elsewhere, they were able to fill in those spots. The first matchup that caught my eye is LSU and Memphis in the Birmingham Bowl. It's an opportunity to boost the Americans' resume, especially after they lose UCF, Cincy, and Houston after this season. The year 6 caliber team in Baylor gets the Cheez-It Bowl against 7-5 Virginia Tech. Should be a good game right there. The Gasparilla Bowl hosts Auburn and Florida State, a rematch of the very last BCS championship game. And dark horses Arkansas and Kansas State square off in the Liberty Bowl. Moving on to the second screen of bowls, you get the last of the smaller bowls. Projected conference champions in App State and UAB face off in the New Orleans Bowl. Texas will be a new face in the SEC very soon. They got a taste of SEC competition against Alabama early in the season, and I project them to face another SEC team in Mississippi State in the Texas Bowl. Getting into the second tier of bowls, you get a bunch of top 25 caliber teams. 11 of these 14 teams were in my projected top 25 rankings that I'll show momentarily. In the Alamo Bowl, I have Oklahoma and Oregon, which I just realized played in the same exact bowl last year. Most likely that won't happen again, but that's where they fell in my projections. College football, Blue Bloods in Miami, UCLA, Florida, and Wisconsin also face each other in bowl games, which should be very interesting. These are my New Year's 6 bowl projections. Starting with the Orange Bowl, you have a rematch from earlier in the season with ACC champion Clemson taking on Notre Dame. On New Year's Eve, Big 12 champion Oklahoma State plays playoff hopeful Texas A&M. In 2023, North Carolina State plays Houston, the Group of 5 representative. Then, in the highly acclaimed Rose Bowl game, I have Michigan facing Southern California. The college football playoff teams consist of Big 10 champion Ohio State, Georgia, and the SEC champion Alabama. Big surprise there. The fourth team being the Utes of Utah, the Pac-12 champion. It's the Pac-12's first playoff berth since 2017, and only the third ever for that conference. For me, it came down to a one-loss Pac-12 champion or a two-loss Texas A&M. Tell me what's the case, because the SEC is significantly stronger than the Pac-12 in terms of talent, but I doubt that the committee would place 3 teams from the same conference in a 4-team playoff, especially when there's another one-loss conference champion. In the semifinal matchups, I had the only projected undefeated team in Ohio State getting past Georgia, and Alabama taking out Utah. As we move into the rankings, here are some of the top group of 5 teams that I considered. A bunch of these are division champions, and all of these teams can sneak into the top 25 if things go their way. Of all of these teams shown here, I think BYU can climb the highest. As we move on from the group of 5, here are some Power 5 teams that are capable of cracking the top 25 if things play in their favor. Some notable names are UCLA, a Pac-12 standout that will join the Big 10 in a couple of years, Iowa, who rose as high as number 2 in the nation in 2021, and Texas, who has a ton of preseason hype riding on their shoulders. Of these 16 teams shown here, don't be surprised to see a few reach double digits, and a few who failed to even go bowling. Now we get into my top 25 rankings. At 24 and 25, we see Tennessee and Kentucky. These 2 teams are SEC dark horses that can definitely play spoiler to Georgia and Alabama, maybe even ruining their playoff chances. Tell me who doesn't play either of these teams in the crossover, however. While I don't see them surpassing Georgia and making the SEC championship, both teams are capable of making some noise. The rest of these teams from 21 down to 23 were all division champions last season. Pitt even won the ACC championship. However, I don't see any of these teams winning their respective divisions again in 2022. But each team should remain competitive, especially Wisconsin, where the Big 10 West is up in the air. Moving up to 16 through 20, you see a pair of teams from the American Athletic and a pair from the Big 10. It will be a race to the AAC title between Houston and Cincinnati, as the Group of 5's New Year's 6 representative will most likely come from the AAC again. Michigan State can make some noise in the Big Ten East. They've beaten their in-state rival in each of the past 2 years, and Purdue has the prime opportunity to win the Big Ten West. This season will most likely be their only realistic shot at the division title for years to come, so they have to make the most of it. In Ole Miss, while I don't think they'll return to a New Year's Six bowl again, they should be clear number 3 in the SEC West. Moving on to the top 15, these 5 teams are legitimate threats to the conference favorites. NC State is looking to defeat Clemson for the 2nd consecutive year, and Miami is looking to bounce back after a disappointing 7-win 2021 campaign. As mentioned in the previous video of my predictions, Oklahoma and Baylor have a case to win the Big 12, but they can easily finish 3rd or 4th as they can't finish 1st, because they have simply too many questions to address for me to believe that they're serious national contenders. Oregon is coming off 2 disappointing seasons, and I fear that some have forgotten how dangerous they can be, especially after showing their vulnerabilities. Don't be surprised if they rise and win the Pac-12 again. These next 5 teams are definitely playoff caliber teams, however with at least 2 projected losses for each team, it puts all of them outside the playoff picture. For Notre Dame, it'll be hard to count them in even with 1 loss, because they don't have a conference. A 1-loss Power 5 conference champion has a better shot at the playoff than a 1-loss Notre Dame. I'm still not sold on Clemson's play caller in Leon Galilei, and that's what hinders their case for the college football playoff. Previous years have suggested that Michigan needs to beat Ohio State to make the playoff. A team just can't take a loss that late in the season. It also means that Notre Dame and USC during the last week of the season essentially serves as a playoff eliminator game. For Oklahoma State, I covered this in the last video that along with Oklahoma and Baylor, they simply have too many questions for me to regard them as a serious national contender. These are my projected top 5 teams in the nation. I see Ohio State as the only undefeated team in the nation and the top seed of the college football playoff. The next 3 teams, or the 3 SEC teams shown, will be fighting for 2 spots in the playoff. I find it extremely unlikely that the committee would put 3 teams from the same conference in a 4-team playoff. So that means that the 4th bid is open to realistically any of the 5 teams shown previously from 6 through 10, but I see Utah taking it. They have a golden opportunity at the playoff with a lot of returning starters for 2022. And as for the playoff seeding, I see Utah jumping Georgia to prevent an SEC matchup in the first round of the playoff. Now we move into the trendy teams for 2022. All of the teams on the left side of the graphic are poised to make some noise, and I ranked all of them in the top 16. Some teams like USC and TAMU may be overrated and could possibly under-deliver like they did in past seasons. However, I do think all 6 of these teams will have an exceptional season in 2022. On the flip side, there are some teams that may have a long season ahead of them, most notably Arizona State. The Sun Devils suffered massively in the transfer portal, and the team who won 8 games a season ago will struggle to even go bowling in 2022. Auburn will struggle in an SEC West where it seems like every other team in that division has improved. For the overrated teams, I just mentioned USC and TAMU. Another team that's massively overrated is Texas. They failed to go bowling a season ago, thanks to Kansas, and I'm questioning just how far they can go this season. Penn State has a fan base hoping they can stick around with Ohio State and the 2 Michigan teams like they did several seasons ago. However, with a recent 11-11 mark over the past 2 seasons, it may take some time. And as for teams who I think are a bit underrated, a pair of Pac-12 teams headline this list. The past 2 seasons have damaged Oregon's reputation a bit, but I think they're still that elite team they have always been in the 2010s. They beat Ohio State in Columbus a season ago before things went south, and they have a chance to pull another massive upset in 2022 in their season opener against Georgia. The Pac-12 has a clear top 4, Oregon, Utah, UCLA, and USC. I feel that the rest of this conference is a bit overlooked, and I think Washington is that team that can step up to number 5. Oregon and Washington are the Pac-12's only playoff representatives, and the Huskies won the Pac-12 North in 2020. Don't be surprised if any of these 6 teams step up and challenge for their conference championships. Here are the top 10 toughest schedules for 2022. SEC teams naturally get on the list for the toughest schedules. It's just that the conference is so elite and so competitive that make it extremely hard for some teams to rack up wins. Texas also gets no favors, playing Alabama in 5 of their 9 conference games on the road. It is also unfortunate that Georgia Tech has to open their season with Clemson and close it on the road against Georgia. There are also 10 Power 5 schools that have easier schedules and can take advantage of them in 2022. I think that's part of the reason why UCLA is still in the Pac-12 championship picture, despite seeming inferior to Utah, USC, and Oregon. Defending ACC division champions in Pitt and Wake Forest are primed to have another memorable season as well. Also, Purdue, NC State, and Oklahoma State can push for conference championship berths if the cards play in their favor. Here are some of the most important games of the season. It all starts off with a banger in Dublin, and all of the games from there are resume builders and have major playoff implications. The biggest games to look for are Notre Dame and Ohio State in Week 1, Talmud vs. Alabama in Week 6, USC and Utah in Week 7, Clemson and Notre Dame in Week 10, and Michigan vs. Ohio State in Week 13. Here are the top 10 head coaches on the hot seat. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind is Nebraska's Scott Frost. When he came back to his alma mater in 2018, there were high hopes in Lincoln. Fans wanted to see their squad return to prominence and avenge their previous 19-19 mark over 3 seasons. But so far, he's done anything but that. For Steve Sarkisian, he's only been around for 1 year, but he lost to Kansas and he failed to go bowling. That performance won't fly in Texas, and if that performance is replicated, don't expect him back in 2023. David Shaw is an interesting case because he has over 90 wins during his time at Stanford. However, the program hasn't seen 5 wins in a single season since 2018. Pressure is building, but Shaw should be around for 2023 as long as things don't collapse. Arizona State's Urban Edwards comes into 2022 with a winning record at the program. 25-18 isn't bad, but it certainly doesn't look good against an NCAA investigation over prospects reportedly being brought in during the COVID-19 dead period. That resulted in several players transferring out, and this could be Edwards' last season at the helm for the Sun Devils. Making a bowl will likely keep most of these coaches around for at least 1 more year, but with programs with higher expectations, like the Longhorns, Seminoles, or Sun Devils, just hitting a mere 6 wins may not be enough. The next 3 screens will show my national All-American projections for 2022. Among the names for the first-team offense All-Americans, look out for 2021 Heisman winner Alabama's Bryce Young and Texas standout in the backfield Bijan Robinson. Kansas State would also have weapons supplementing new quarterback Adrian Martinez with Deuce Vaughn and Malik Knowles. Projected second-team quarterback Ohio State's CJ Stroud would also appreciate the wide receiver running back duo in Jackson Smith-Njigba and Travion Henderson for 2022. For the first-team defense All-Americans, look out for Iowa State's Will McDonald IV. McDonald recorded 36 tackles, 11.5 sacks, 3 deflections, and 5 forced fumbles in 2021. He's definitely a force to be reckoned with in 2022. Also on the defensive line are 2 representatives from Clemson. Keep an eye on them for this upcoming season. Iowa's Jack Campbell had a breakout year in 2021, totaling 143 tackles and 2 interceptions. That combined with Riley Moss, who recorded 4 interceptions and 2 touchdowns last season, will make Iowa's defense a threat to any offense they play come 2022. For the second team All-Americans, expect Braylon Allen to step up for Whiskey and have yet another breakout year. And Ohio State's offensive line should be one of the best in 2022, another factor that CJ Stroud should benefit off of. Alabama's Jordan Battle, projected first team in the secondary, would also receive help from LSU transfer Eli Ricks, projected second team in the secondary for 2022. Battle recorded 86 tackles and 3 interceptions in 2021, and Ricks had 4 interceptions and 2 touchdowns in the shortened 2020 season for LSU. That combined will make Alabama a serious threat in the secondary. This graphic shows how many projected first and second team All-Americans came from each team. 54 selections were split across 32 teams, 9 teams came from the SEC, 8 from the Big Ten, 5 from the Big 12, 4 from the ACC, 3 from the Pac-12, 2 from the FBS Independents, and 1 from the American. 10 teams had multiple selections, 4 of them came in my projected top 5 national rankings, those being Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas A&M. Each one of these 10 teams, with the exception of maybe Kansas State, has high hopes for 2022. I wouldn't be surprised to see any 9 of them in the top 10 at some point in 2022. That also explains why Kansas State is a popular dark horse pick coming into this season. All 10 of these teams are hoping that the talent they have on the roster can convert to wins on the field. The last topic I want to cover in this video are my Heisman candidates. Right now I see CJ Stroud and Bryce Young as heavy favorites for the award, giving a slight edge to the former. It's very hard to win 2 Heisman trophies, and only one has ever done it before, and it was back in 1975, where Ohio State's Archie Griffin won it for the second time. Caleb Williams can also find himself in the running if he can change the fortunes for USC in 2022. I'm giving Bijan Robinson, one of the top running backs in the nation, the best chance for a non-quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy. Also, Will Anderson Jr. marks for the only defensive player I have in the Heisman race, at least for now. The Ohio State wide receiver running back duo in Smith-Njigba and Henderson I mentioned earlier in the video are both on this list as well. Wrapping up this list is a triplet of quarterbacks from the ACC. So that'll wrap up this video, part 2 of my college football predictions. If you missed part 1, it went over all of my win-loss record predictions for each team, along with the standings, biggest games, and conference championship game result for each of the 10 conferences. Be sure to check that video out if you missed it. And with that, it's been FBN Circuit. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.